So what's going on? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. So what we're going right now is have a little game session. And what we're going to talk about today is Dwayne Wade and the attack on black masculinity. And so I use this particular headline because I wanted to bring people in because I understand what is coming next from this particular story that is going to start hitting the news feeds and going to start hitting social media about Dwayne Wade and the fact that he came out and talked about that his son, who was his child, who was previously his son, I think now is going to transition into a woman to a girl, right, from a gender standpoint, but not biologically, because we understand that there's a difference between gender and biology. And if somebody wants to argue that, we can have a biology discussion. And so we're going to talk about this because we understand, like we said, is that a lot of the social media pundits, especially a lot of the quote unquote black conscious social media people, they're going to kind of jump out in front of this if they think that the audience is going to be talking about this. And the reason why they're going to jump out in front of it because they understand that we're going to always try to position ourselves in front of what our particular audience is talking about it. Now, me personally, I don't really have any opinion on it because I don't understand why Dwayne Wade, as a parent, is putting his the way he raises his children into the public, because I'm so not into that kind of stuff. If I knew that particular child was born a male and then Dwayne Wade showed up somewhere and told me, well, hey, this is my daughter. And even though I knew that daughter previously was his son, I would be like, hey, how you doing? And I would keep it moving because, I came up in a different environment where you can't really show your emotion to a lot of things. You have to let people know that I'm focused on what I'm focused on and everything else going around me really don't mean anything to me. So that's really how I would deal with it. However, what we're going to kind of go is in some of the deeper implications, because we understand that the reason why these social media pundits and these quote unquote black conscious and these black empowerment pundits are going to try to jump out in front of this is because they know how you think. And you think and the belief that you have around these particular issues and how this issue is going to get positioned is what they're going to try to use to play you, right, to build affinity between yourself and them. And so I have specific questions about how a lot of people believe about this particular issue, because I already saw one video on YouTube from this guy that I don't necessarily follow, but he comes up in my stream because of the way the Google algorithm works about this particular issue. And he said that, he used a picture of Dwayne Wade's daughter, who was previously his son, and also used a picture of Magic Johnson's son. And he said, was this attack on black masculinity? So my question is this. When we talk about what we have is that we have, especially because of social media, over the past few years, what you have is gay people will be pushed to the forefront by mainstream media. And we're going to go into why that happens. So gay people get pushed to the forefront because of mainstream media, right? And then what happens is now people try to build social media traction by saying that, one, there's a gay agenda. Two, when I say gay people, I mean gay black people. So I want to make sure I'm specific because I'm not really talking about gay white people because I don't necessarily care what they do because they're going to do what they're going to do. So gay black people are pushed to the forefront of mass media. Then what people now is they come out and they say, well, you know what? This is an attack on black masculinity. This is a gay agenda. So my question to them is, I have several questions about this particular perspective as perceiving these particular things that way. So the question I have first is that how do we define masculinity? So if we're saying that the media promoting this, and they are promoting it, all right, because the media doesn't really care about Dwayne Wade outside of playing basketball, but all of a sudden they now are concerned with how he raises his children. Right. So for this to become a story, the media, for whatever reason, has invested in putting this particular story to the forefront. So the question is, how do we define masculinity? And we'll find out, if you really understand and examine that, is there is no one standard version of masculinity, something that Amos Wilson taught us. And I would encourage you, a lot of you, if you have the ability to think critically, to start to read and learn from Amos Wilson, because he can kind of help the way you think about things, especially from a very pragmatic point of view. The definition of masculinity, right? There's not a universal definition of masculinity. It never has been and never will be. So masculinity is really based upon that particular group of people that a specific person belongs to. So masculinity can be tribe by tribe. It can be nation by nation. It can be neighborhood by neighborhood. It can be block by block, right? So the way me and my people, right, define masculinity, or the way my family defines masculinity, may not be the way your family or your people define masculinity. So let me give you an example. I woke up this morning and there were several problems I had to solve, all right, inside this house. One of them was a problem I already knew I had to solve. The other was a problem that came up last night that I had to wake up and solve that problem first before I could solve the second problem, which I already knew I had to solve, right, before I woke up. In my family, as a masculine man, you have to be able to solve problems, right? You have to be involved in problem solving. You got to figure out how to get projects to a conclusion, right? And you can't like have an emotional breakdown while it's happening because people are depending on you to solve problems. That's one of your roles in the family. So I had to wake up this morning and solve problems, and I was able to solve a problem temporarily, but then at the same time, that's a longer term problem that I got to try to figure out how to deal with. It's going to take some research and some work on my end. It's also going to take some money to solve this problem. So now also I can't solve the problem with money. So now I got to generate income to also help solve this problem. In my family, this is one of the ways in which we define masculinity. Okay, me being involved in these particular actions. In your family or your group, that may not be masculinity. You may come from a group where women solve all the problems and the men just sit back and do nothing. I don't know because I don't come from your group. I don't come from your background. So it can be a very group by group thing. So when I'm looking at Dwayne Wade in a situation with his child and how that's promoted, or even a situation like Billy Porter, I believe that's his name. Let me look that up real quick. Is that Billy Porter? Is that's his name? How that's positioned in the particular media. I don't see it as Billy Porter. I don't see it as an attack on masculinity. Why? Because it doesn't have anything to do with what I do. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So I don't care what they do. It don't have anything to do with what I do. And I understand, because I understand what goes on in this world, why that's even put in front of us. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So the first question I would have to ask you is that how does your group define masculinity? And if your group defines masculinity in a way that doesn't have anything to do with what Billy Porter does, with what RuPaul does, with what Irvin Johnson or Magic Johnson's son is doing, or even what Dwayne Wade is doing with his daughter who was previously his son, if it don't have anything to do with that, then how is it an attack on your masculinity? Okay? Because what they're doing doesn't impair my ability to act in a masculine role in my particular group. So the first thing we need to ask is, how do we define it? And so the question I have for a lot of black people, but especially a lot of black males, but it's not just the males, because we understand, we talk about this definition of masculinity. It's upheld not just by the men, but also by the women, because the women accept this definition and they also help the men uphold it. So for your particular group, how do you define masculinity? And how come you're not defining masculinity, right, by things that are about you protecting and taking care of your children and your family? So that would be the question I have. And so if you're involved in taking care and protecting your children and your family and creating situations that are going to be beneficial to your children and to your family, why are you concerned with what Billy Porter's doing? That's what he's doing, and we understand why he's been given a platform and a stage to do that on. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So when people come out and tell you that something is an attack on black masculinity, let's get historical with it. The original attack on black masculinity, right, in this country is us creating obstacles for black men to take care of their family. That's the original attack on black masculinity. Because as a man, if you can't support and take care of your child and the women in your family and the older people in your family, if you can't figure out a way to sustain them, right, and to bring some type of resources to them, to me, that's an attack on your masculinity. So incarcerating black men, denying them jobs, when they have the ability to build businesses, having people come and burn those businesses down and kill them, to me, those are attacks on black masculinity. That don't have anything to do with gay people, and especially don't have anything to do with gay black people. So when we look about how black people have been terrorized, by how black men have been terrorized in this country by this system and not allowed to be providers for their family by some of the obstacles that are put into this system. And even if you can figure it out, right, you're only allowed to operate at such a low level. That is the real attack on black masculinity. But it's funny how nobody wants to talk about that, because they know that you have been conditioned a lot by religion, by media, to think that I'm in competition with somebody like Billy Porter. You're not in competition with Billy Porter unless you care about white people, right? You're not in competition with Irvin Magic Johnson's son unless you care about white people. And when I say care about them, what I mean is that unless your relationship with them is really important. You're not in competition with RuPaul unless you really care about white people, unless your relationship with them is really important. And so what I think we dealing with a lot of black people is that they have allowed their relationship with Anglo people, or what we call white people, to define their masculinity. And what this society has done was taken and created and made your masculinity mean that you're at the bottom of society and you're constantly scraping to get by. And so as soon as you see somebody else, right, that think they might have a little bit better situation than you attack them, because in reality, you want to be where they at. See, a lot of y'all want to get the same platform and get the same attention from Anglo people that Billy Porter gets. You really want that attention from Anglo people. So when you see him get that attention, you think that, you know what, he's only getting that attention because he's gay and they won't give me that attention, so therefore I'll attack him. But my question is, why do you want the attention? I don't care how many interviews or how many platforms Magic's son gets. I know why they giving him that attention, why he's getting those interviews and getting those platforms. I don't desire that same attention. And he doesn't fit my version of masculinity, so I don't care what he does. The same thing with Wade. Love Wade as a basketball player. But I don't like how Wade is allowing these people to use him, right, for that particular platform, because Wade is not taking that particular story and bringing it to us. He went mainstream with that particular story, but I can understand that because it's mainstream media that made Wade into the superstar player that he is. So he went mainstream with that story, right? Instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to try to bring understanding to my people of how you deal with a child that may be trans or homosexual, and I'm going to bring this to platforms that deal with my folks. So he didn't go that route. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So my question is, the only reason why you should be upset about what these people are doing is if that you want that same kind of attention from that group of people that have given them the platform, because they have been giving a platform to promote what they're doing. Now, we also got to understand this. Any individual black person can be turned against black people as a group. So it's not ever going to be about gay people. It's never going to be about lesbians. It's never going to be about trans. It's never going to be about black women. It's never going to be about black men. It's about the fact that this society, right, has such a strong pull on people that it will isolate any individual person and turn them against their own folks. And it's been doing that for a very long time, and it will continue to do that. So when I'm looking at somebody like Billy Porter, right, or I'm looking at somebody like Lee Daniels, who's a really good example of this, I don't see a person that is doing that because he's gay. What I see is a black person that has decided that my individual success is more important than my group of people, right? And so it don't matter what kind of role I have to play in this society. I'll do it as if it can get me the attention and the success that I desire as an individual. And we got a big narrative on social media from a lot of black people, especially a lot of black women, that are saying, well, you know what? You should be all out for your individual success. You should be all out for your individual whatever. That's cool if that's what you want to do. But at the same time, when these people turn on you, remember you was an individual. They did the same thing to Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby was by himself. He was an individual. He didn't deal with a lot of other black people. He got the attention and he got the platforms of a lot of white folks, right? He was by himself. He was an individual. When the white people turned on him, he was an individual. So my thing is that Billy Porter, Wade, Magic Johnson's son, Lee Daniels, do whatever you want to do. When those people turn on you, when you no longer serve their purpose, when they got a new person that they going to use to promote whatever they trying to promote, and they decide that they going to discard you, always remember that you was an individual going after your individual success, doing what you want to do. Okay? That's the third point. The fourth point is that when are we going to start to define masculinity, right, as being something that's beneficial to our family, as something that's beneficial to our children? Because let me tell you something. Earlier today, I was looking for a particular product, right? There's not a black store in this particular city. I live in Orlando, Florida. There's not a black store in the city that sells that product. I had to go to some Asians to get that product. Where I go with these Asians to get that product, and if Carla Houston is still on this particular live stream, she know what I'm talking about. It's right there by Kirkman and West Colonial. It's an old Gold's Gym. They took an old Gold's Gym, and it was a plaza in there. So Gold's Gym anchored the plaza. Everything in that plaza now is owned by Koreans. They got a beauty parlor. They got a tanning parlor. They got a big old supermarket. They got a lot of other different businesses. Down the street from there is another plaza owned by some Chinese people. They own the whole plaza. What's interesting when we look at black people in this country and we look at other people of other ethnicities, how they define masculinity is totally different than how black people define masculinity. And so when are we going to start defining masculinity? By we building something for our people. We creating commerce for our people. We trying to figure out how we can develop relationships with people to make sure that we got access to safe and reliable resources to our people. We making sure we take care of our family and our children and the women in our family and the old people in our family. When is that going to be our definition of masculinity? Because if that is your definition of masculinity, Wade does or what Billy Porter does, because what they do doesn't impair your ability to do that. So the mainstream media can take a Chinese person or a Chinese American person or a Korean American person and could put them on television, and let's say they happen to be gay, and they could promote that to the highest degree. Those people that live, that have that particular commerce or have that shopping mall down the street from me, that won't impair their ability to continue to make sure that they people got food and got services and got resources as in the form of a grocery store. And so because they define masculinity different, they're not concerned with that. Because we only define masculinity based on our relationship with Anglo people, we're always concerned about our relationship with Anglo people and how another black person is going to impair or impact that relationship, because that's all we got. So we don't have anything amongst our own. So we always worry about how they see us or how they look at us or how they're trying to tear us down. And it's because we don't have nothing of our own. And that's really how they got us. Because like I told us before, is that they have created a society where we operate at the lowest level of masculinity. And we haven't figured out how to do anything about that. So we operate at that low level, and we always are concerned about how they look, think, or act, or feel about us. Where if you look at other ethnic groups, that's not their concern. And until we're really ready to do the really difficult work of trying to build something that doesn't involve how they think and feel about us, we're always going to be reacting to these type of situations. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? And so until you can find the strength in your group to figure out how do we produce men that solve problems as opposed to sit on the internet and complain about everything? How do we produce men that can create partnerships with other men, right? And build something for their people instead of sitting on the internet and complain and argue with women all the time? And how can we not only produce that, but figure out a way to scale that out to where we got enough people to where we can really move with something? We always going to be worrying about how this particular society takes this one individual person and puts them on a platform. And then we feel like we are being disrespected, or we're being in some way denigrated because of the platform that particular person gave them. And in reality, my question to you is, why are you watching that in the first place? None of the platforms that Billy Porter appears on do I watch. I don't watch any of that stuff because primarily those are platforms that are based around Anglo-Americans and what they appreciate and what they feel like is important. I don't care about any of that. I'm sitting back with my group and we talking about how we're going to get income out of the stock market. So we're not talking about that. So I don't care what that guy does. Like I said, he's acting as an individual. If that works for him, I hope that he's satisfied. And when it don't work for him, I want him to understand that he's acting as an individual. So keep it individual. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So I just think that because we're not really concerned with the building of things, right, as people and as different groups, and understanding how we can link these groups up and we can build something together and create some kind of community, we get distracted by this type of stuff. And then the quote unquote black people in social media that we have affinity for, they also feed this back to us and get us caught up in this kind of like emotional a roller coaster of getting us riled up about this. OK, and I just think it's really not productive. And 4 or 5 years later, we still going to be back in the same position. And Dwayne Wade, if you look this up, his net worth is $120 million. So it don't matter what he do with his family. They going to all be good because his family is never going to have to work. Right. Magic Johnson is worth $600 million. Magic Johnson almost worth $1 billion. Right. His son can act as flamboyant as he want to act. You want to know why? His son ain't never going to have to go somewhere and try to look for a job. So it don't matter what Irvin Johnson's son does. He's good. And so we need to start asking ourselves is why are we more concerned with their children as opposed to making sure that our children got something? Because Wade and Magic Johnson, even though they hit the lotto athletically, they went out there on the court and did the work to make sure, right, that their family could have something. I know where Wade is from. He's not from a really great place from an environmental standpoint. He hit the lotto athletically, but he went out on that court and he did the work and he risked his physical health to make sure he can be up $120 million. So what he does with his family, they're good no matter what he does. He could come back 3 years later and say, you know what? We made a mistake. My son, who is now my daughter, is really my son, and it still won't affect anything in their life because his son, his daughter, who was previously his son, is never going to have to work for somebody. Your children are faced with having to go work for some people who don't really like them, who have decided that they're going to push them down to the bottom of society, right? And instead of you trying to figure out how to combat that, you're worried about what these individual people are doing, who a lot of them are already good. And because of that, your children are going to be faced with the same exact problem you face with. So that's my perspective on that. I'm not going to talk about it anymore because, like I said, it's not, to me, something that we should be focused on. What you should be focused on is things that are a lot more important to our group and how we can solve the problems of our group. And there's no problem of my group that's going to be solved by putting a curtain or a lid on what Dwayne Wade is doing, what Billy Porter's doing, what Lee Daniels is doing, what Irvin Magic Johnson's son is doing, what RuPaul is doing. That don't solve any of the problems of my group. To me, if you don't like it, don't look at it, right? Don't deal with it. Eventually to go away, and then we can go back to dealing with our real problems, which is how we can get more income to our people, how we can get access to more resources, how we can stop selling our time to people for a very low amount of money, how we can start improving our health, how we can start taking care of our children and the people in our family and making sure they have something that when we gone, they're not starting back over from square one. So if you got any questions or comments, hit me up. This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, and I'll talk to you later.